these are more than just athletes and more than just students. They're also humans. And humans sometimes make bad decisions, sometimes make good decisions. And so what I'm after is human flourishing. And that's not just athletically. That comes with faith, family, you could argue football, whatever sport you do, and also financially. So you may be flourishing financially, but if you have no idea of no background in faith, it's probably not going to end up very well. You might be flourishing in your faith, but if you've squandered and wasted your wealth, it's probably not going to end up very well. And so we need to think of a more holistic approach. Part of that is the financial education piece.
Apparently, Congress has discovered that giving teenagers millions of dollars without a financial playbook might not be the best long-term investment. Who could have seen that coming?
Mr. Moran.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, panelists. Thanks for hosting this meeting, this important committee hearing today. Mr. Chairman, I appreciate all of your insights, particularly as they relate to the NIL issues. This is an interesting topic that's come up for the federal government, not the one that you would expect to come up. I know you guys have had a long day today. I want to start with you, Mr. Acho, and just tell you, first of all, how taken back and appreciative I was at your comments when you started out your opening statement, particularly about understanding that there needs to be a faith-based approach. Frankly, when we're talking about these kiddos and their youth and their age, I've got kids in that same age. Neither one of them are college athletes, but certainly there's still a lot of life to learn about. And we are giving them so much money at a moment in time when they don't have that support structure or the education or the knowledge and the wisdom. That's really what it's about, is the wisdom to know what to do with it. So I want to just tell you up front, I think your idea about financial education for student athletes and creating opportunities for student athletes to utilize tax advantage savings and investment accounts to help them prepare for the future is brilliant. I was texting my staff saying, this is a great idea. We need to jump on that. Is there something that you haven't said about that today that you want to reemphasize? Do you want to make sure that you have had an opportunity to sell that idea? Because I think this is a really great idea.
I think the first thing I'll say, Mr. Moran, is these are more than just athletes and more than just students. They're also humans. And humans sometimes make bad decisions, sometimes make good decisions. And so what I'm after is human flourishing. And that's not just athletically. That comes with faith, family, you could argue football, whatever sport you do, and also financially. So you may be flourishing financially, but if you have no idea of no background in faith, it's probably not going to end up very well. You might be flourishing in your faith, but if you've squandered and wasted your wealth, it's probably not going to end up very well. And so we need to think of a more holistic approach. Part of that is the financial education piece. The other part of that is thinking about my sister, right? She works at the Federal Reserve Bank in Dallas. They have a thrift plan where there's automatic, not even withholding, but automatic employer match. I understand these athletes are not employees, but one thing we've seen, that 87% rate that we've talked about when it comes to forcing people to save, right? Think about 401ks, making people save money. When I was a part of the NFL Players Association, my job was to speak up on behalf of all of the players, and some things that we did was finding ways to have players save money. And so if I were just to reiterate the point would be to allow athletes to save a certain amount of money. Maybe it's similar to how they do in an individual retirement account or a 401k, and have that money be able to grow tax deferred, and then give players access to that money earlier than that 59.5 time frame. Because think about it, the average career in the NFL is 3 years. I played in the NFL, I played for 9, I finished at 32 or 31 years old. That's still 20 more years before I get access to that money.
Yeah, I think you're right on target. And my kiddos, the way I tell them about it is, look, you're going to have a lot of liberty in life. You're probably going to have a lot more prosperity than most folks. But what needs to come with that is responsibility. There's got to be self-responsibility built into that, or it won't last. Even this weekend, I was having a conversation with one of my kids about a matching plan for a job she's at now. And I told her, I said, you know what the answer is always when that is presented to you? The answer is always yes. You want to participate. You want to be involved in that. So thank you for your advocacy on that. I want to come back to Mr. Madden and Mr. Rayola as well, because I want to talk about the IRS and its use of, or its view of the NIL collectives as sometimes tax exempt and sometimes not. So The IRS has found that many NIL collectives should generally not qualify for tax-exempt status because the private benefits they provide to student athletes do not serve a tax-exempt status or purpose. Mr. Madden and Mr. Raiola, could you talk us through the rationale NIL collectives provide for their tax-exempt status? Why might it make sense and why might it not? I'll start with you, Mr. Raiola, or Mr. Madden.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Representative Moran. As I testified earlier, the collectives, many of the collectives throughout the country, after the Alston Supreme Court case and the NCAA's decision to allow athletes to monetize their NIL, that gave rise to the collectives, which are essentially boosters pooling their money. And many of them applied for tax-exempt status through the IRS, it would be the tax-exempt and government entities business unit of IRS. NIL was brand new. No one really knew what it was. When I suggested that we have a nationwide, enterprise-wide task force to study NIL at IRS, many of the commissioners, executives asked me what NIL was. And I think, to no fault of anyone at IRS, because it was brand new, many of the collectors were erroneously granted tax-exempt status. It's the reason why in June of 2023, IRS Chief Counsel issued a memorandum clearly pointing out that most of the collectives, as they saw them, did not qualify for tax-exempt status, because what they were doing is pooling their money and paying athletes hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, to make maybe 2 or 3 appearances a year, maybe at an alumni event, maybe signing autographs, going to a children's hospital around the holidays, attending a sports camp in the summer, and it just didn't line up with the public good or a solely educational purpose.
Yeah, Mr. Raiola, we're out of time, but I'll just say in relation to that, the donors, a lot of them gave thinking it was going to be tax exempt, and now they've got some tax issues related to that because it was unrolled in a lot of situations. Big, complicated area, even in the tax space. Appreciate all your testimony. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
What begins as a discussion about college athletics quickly evolves into a conversation about financial responsibility, human development, and the unintended consequences of the NIL revolution. Rather than focusing solely on athletes earning endorsement money, lawmakers and witnesses ask a deeper question: are young adults being equipped to handle sudden wealth? The proposal to combine financial education with tax-advantaged savings accounts represents a significant shift in thinking. Instead of debating whether student athletes should earn money, the discussion centers on how to ensure that today's earnings become tomorrow's financial security. The conversation also exposes a larger economic lesson extending far beyond college sports. America has long struggled with declining personal savings, rising consumer debt, and limited financial education in schools. Witnesses argue that automatic savings mechanisms. It raises an important question for every American family: if financial literacy is essential for professional athletes earning millions, shouldn't it be a national priority for everyone entering adulthood? Similar to retirement plans available in traditional employment, could dramatically improve long-term financial outcomes for athletes whose careers often last only a few years. But why stop there? Could policies designed to encourage disciplined saving benefit the broader workforce as well? As inflation continues to challenge household budgets and retirement security becomes increasingly uncertain. This hearing quietly highlights a much larger debate about whether the nation should invest more in building financial resilience instead of simply reacting to financial crises after they occur. The hearing concludes by shifting from personal finance to tax policy, revealing another layer of complexity surrounding the rapidly expanding NIL industry. Questions over whether NIL collectives deserve tax-exempt status illustrate how quickly innovation can outpace government oversight. When billions of dollars move into a new marketplace faster than regulators can define the rules, uncertainty affects everyone, from athletes and universities to donors and taxpayers. For Americans, this isn't just a sports story, it's another example of how emerging industries challenge existing tax laws, influence public revenues, and ultimately shape economic fairness. The broader takeaway is difficult to ignore, as college athletics becomes an increasingly sophisticated business. Policymakers must decide whether the legal and financial systems built for yesterday's economy are capable of managing tomorrow's opportunities.